This is a critical week for American independence. This week, June 5th, 1776. On this day, the draft of what would become the Declaration of Independence circulated quietly among members of the drafting committee. Thomas Jefferson had written the first version. Benjamin Franklin and John Adams reviewed it. This was not casual editing. Every word mattered. Meanwhile, the question of independence itself remained formally unresolved in Congress. Votes were being counted. Colonies still awaited final instructions. Outside Philadelphia, the war intensified. British forces gathered strength for their coming campaign in New York. The colonies stood at a strange moment. The justification for independence was being refined before independence was officially declared. June 5 showed us something critical. The argument for separation was solidifying. The vote would soon follow. On June 6, 1776, momentum built toward a formal motion for independence. Richard Henry Lee of Virginia prepared to introduce it. His authority came from the Virginia Convention, which had explicitly instructed its delegates to propose independence. That instruction mattered. Congress did not act alone. It responded to its colonies. Behind the scenes, political pressure mounted in Pennsylvania and New York. Without their support, unanimity would falter. Meanwhile, British strategy remained focused on dividing the colonies by seizing control of the Hudson River. The military and political timelines were converging. June 6th was about alignment, military threat, political resolve. The colonies were moving toward an irreversible decision. On June 7th, 1776, Richard Henry Lee rose in Congress and introduced a resolution that changed history. His motion read, "Resolved that these United Colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is, and ought to be, totally dissolved." He continued that it is expedient forthwith to take the most effectual measures for forming foreign alliances, and that a plan of confederation be prepared and transmitted to the respective colonies for their consideration and approbation. 3 pillars. 1, independence. 2, foreign alliances. 3, confederation. Debate began immediately. Some colonies requested delay, but the line had been crossed. On June 7, 1776, independence was no longer a rumor. It was a motion. On June 7, 1776, Congress debated Lee's resolution. Arguments were forceful. Supporters insisted reconciliation was impossible. Opponents feared division and premature action. New York still lacked authority to vote. South Carolina hesitated. Pennsylvania remained split. To preserve unity, Congress postponed the final vote, but the direction was clear. While debate continued, the drafting committee accelerated its work. If independence passed, the colonies would need a formal explanation. June 8th was a day of argument, but it was also a day of preparation. On June 9, 1776, colonial governments accelerated internal political change. Pennsylvania radicals pushed to restructure their provincial assembly. Moderate resistance weakened. The balance shifted. Meanwhile, Congress continued refining the language of the Declaration. Edits tightened Jefferson's phrasing. Charges against the king were sharpened. The tone moved from grievance to indictment. June 9 marks the moment when independence became less conditional and more certain. June 10th, 1776. On this day, Congress formally postponed the final vote on independence until July 1st. Why? Several delegations still awaited instructions. Unanimity mattered. A divided declaration would weaken the new nation before it began. Meanwhile, the drafting committee continued polishing the document. Independence was delayed, but not abandoned. June 10th shows discipline. Better to wait briefly and speak as one. June 11th, 1776. On this day, Congress formally appointed a committee to draft a declaration explaining the colonies' decision. Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Roger Sherman, and Robert Livingston. Jefferson would take the lead. The vote had not yet passed, but Congress prepared its justification. This was confidence. This was preparation. This was inevitability, assembling itself. Yes, this week in 1776 was critical for what would follow.